Well, a very special exhibit is now on display at the Aurora Historical Society Museum. Lincoln, the Constitution, and the Civil War. This traveling exhibit runs through April 5th and is one of only 11 stops in the state of Ohio.
We applied for this grant to get this exhibit with the American Library Association and the National Constitution Center last March. And it was a pretty competitive process. Only 11 locations in Ohio were actually able to host this exhibit. We applied for it. We had to make sure that we included the amount of people in our community. We had to show that we would generate interest and we would generate an audience. We did that in 2008 with a Smithsonian exhibit on key ingredients America by food. We had 1,500 people here in approximately 6 weeks. And that helped, as well as our ability to do outreach with the community. We are partnering with the library as well as other organizations, and we are able to draw a really nice crowd, not only from Aurora, but the city of Cleveland, Akron, Youngstown, from quite a variety of different places around here. So we're very excited about this exhibit.
Well, you know, Lincoln, when he came to the presidency, was a rather unknown individual. A lot of people didn't know him from his congressional experience in Illinois. And it wasn't until the Civil War that people really began to identify who the man was. And it was the Civil War which really identified Lincoln as a president of the United States, and probably one of our strongest presidents during this period of time. It really doesn't focus on Lincoln's life and the relationship with his family. It really focuses on his struggle with the Civil War issues that divided the country. Obviously, the main one was the issue of secession. Was the United States a United States, or were we a confederacy? Did individual states have the right to secede from the Union? And obviously it was Lincoln's opinion that they did not have that ability to do so. Another issue was the issue of slavery. During the Civil War, Lincoln had abolished slavery, but the real struggle was with Congress later on the issue of the 13th Amendment. Lincoln wanted to make sure that the Emancipation Proclamation and what it did by freeing the slaves in the South was permanently etched into the American legacy, and that once and for all slavery would be abolished in the United States. And then it also dealt with the issue of civil liberties during the Civil War. When the war broke out, Lincoln suspended the right of habeas corpus and detained individuals without constitutional rights, and that was a big civil rights issue that even went as far as through the Supreme Court during the Civil War. Aurora was kind of controversial at the beginning. At one point in time, we were very Copperhead, kind of pro-South in a lot of our issues. Then over about a 10-15 year period, we swung away from that. A lot of people don't know that early in our history, in the 1835, we actually had a little mini riot here in Aurora at the church in Aurora called the Bigelow Riot. Isaac Bigelow was a student at Western Reserve College over in Hudson at the time, and actually before Oberlin College became the hotbed of abolitionism, Hudson, Ohio really was. And our minister at the church in Aurora, the Federated Church, John Seward, although he didn't really support abolition, he wanted to support speakers, and invited Isaac Bigelow to come to the church and to speak on a Sunday afternoon. Well, the town found out about this, and when it came time for the sermon, the church was packed, but it was unfortunately packed with those people who were opposed to the idea of abolition. When Seward began the service, there was prayers, everybody was very reverent. When Bigelow stood up to speak, it just disrupted into a mob scene. A group of young men rode around the church on horseback, firing pistols and ranting and raving. A mini cannon was kind of shot in the distance. It shattered the windows of the church. Bigelow had to be escorted from the church by Seward and his wife to escape being harmed, while rotten tomatoes and vegetables were thrown at him. So we do have a connection. Also in 1860, across the street from the Congregational Church at the Disciples of Christ Church, young Lieutenant Colonel James A. Garfield who had been a minister at the church during his student years at Hiram College, came to recruit young men to join the Union forces to fight in the Civil War. So we do have a definite connection with the events going on at that period of time. As part of the grant for this exhibit, we have to put on some scholarly events. So on March 16th, we have an event coming up. It's a Saturday at 5 o'clock. It's free to the public. It's going to feature two professors, one from John Carroll University, a Dr. Daniel Kilbride, who's going to talk about the Constitution and civil liberties during the Civil War, and Dr. Diane Barnes from Youngstown State University, who will be speaking about abolitionism. Then on the 30th of March, we have Dr. Dan Donoforio, who is going to be speaking to us about medical advances during the Civil War. That event is going to be sponsored by Robinson Memorial Hospital. And I forgot to mention that our earlier event on the 16th with the lawyers is going to be sponsored by Betsy Tomasco Garner, who is a local law firm. Let me mention also that as part of the program, part of the exhibit, we have an outreach program going on also. We've done a lot with the Aurora public schools. Our first and second graders have written postcards to President Lincoln, and they will be on display throughout the exhibit. Our third and fourth grade classes are having Skype programs put on by Dr. Wilson. Our eighth graders, we're setting up a passport program where they will be able to come to the visit the museum and get credit for that visitation. And then all of our sophomore 10th grade classes are going to actually be taking field trips to the museum as part of the outreach program. The Chamber of Commerce is also holding their monthly meeting here on the 13th of March. So we have a lot going out into the community, not only in the local Aurora community, but throughout Northeast Ohio. So in essence, what does this do? You know, it's a great opportunity for us to showcase not only the Aurora Historical Society, but the entire community of Aurora. You know, we often struggle as an organization to how do we get people to come to the museum? It's like, you know, Aurora's best hidden secret here. And I think this kind of activity really does showcase it. Our gala event the other evening, we had close to 180 people. 63 of those people were members of the society. There are 120, you know, close to 120 were people from outside the Historical Society. So I think this has been a fantastic event for us to host.
You know, from a non-historian's perspective, taking a look at Lincoln and taking a look at that time period in history makes us re-examine what we thought really this time period was all about. And it makes us take a look at Lincoln not from the standpoint of the things that we remember so much from history class, but from the standpoint of three major issues. Constitutional issues actually that faced Lincoln, that he faced during this time period. The first one was secession by the southern states. The second one was what Lincoln believed was his moral imperative to change, which was slavery. And the third were the constitutional rights that sometimes are usurped during periods of war. And this exhibit takes a look at those three issues, and we stand back and examine that time period and all that happened that in such a short period during Lincoln's first presidency. And then we ask ourselves, do these things still endure? And I think that that is a great question for all of us to ask ourselves.